Hey guys, what's up? Thanks so much for tuning in again this week. This week I want to continue our series, Encounters, and what we're doing is we're just going through the Gospels and we're looking at different encounters that Jesus had with people, and what we're doing is we're really trying to get a better grasp of God's heart and the compassion and the love that Jesus has for us, and through looking at these stories and just getting a better grasp of His love for us and who we are to Him and who we are in His eyes. So this week I want to share the story of Lazarus, and before I get into it, I just want to encourage y'all, if y'all like these videos, please do share them, post them on your wall on Facebook, or share the link with somebody else. Let's be the hands and feet of Christ in this, and not just, if we like the video, not just keep it for ourselves, but share it and get it out there, and keep the sharing going and pass it along if you really like it. So this week we want to look at the story of Lazarus. And I want to dig deeper in this to help us understand. You saw the post of this week, before I came on the live feed. You saw the still video of the sign that said, my desires and God's plans. And this is what I want to talk about this week. And I really want to pull 3 key truths out of the story of Lazarus to help us understand how God's plans go hand in hand with our desires, and which one comes first. Do our desires come first? Is God okay with us just, having a ticket to eternity and then basically pretty much doing our own thing while we're down here on the earth, as long as it's not blatant sin? Or does He have specific plans for our lives, detailed plans that He has for us while we're here on this earth? So this is what I want to tell you, is that God does have plans for us. When we get saved, once we become a follower of Christ, our life is no longer our own. And we have to understand that God didn't simply save us just so we could spend eternity in heaven. He saved us so that He could enact His plans through us to reach other people in this world. So God will always have a plan for your life that is gospel-based. His plan for your life is such that He puts you in that plan in order to be His hands and feet and to reach other people in this world. That's why God has plans for us. One, to help us live a free life, a happy life, but also, our life isn't always going to be happy. We're going to have trials, we're going to have struggles, but His main goal for our life, is that we be the hands and feet of Christ, and through that, the closer we draw to Him, the more our desires become the same as His desires, and through being the hands and feet of Christ, that will bring us the happiest life that we could ever have. And so I want to share 3 things out of the story of Lazarus to help you see how God's plans work in our lives and how His heart is toward us when it comes to His plans versus our desires. So I want to break this down for you real quick. Basically, this story of Lazarus, you have to understand that Lazarus was very close friends with Jesus, as well as Lazarus' 2 sisters, Martha and Mary. They were all very close with Jesus. And when Lazarus became ill, it says that Martha and Mary sent somebody to find Jesus, who was in another town at the time, to tell Jesus that Lazarus had become very ill. And they obviously, with the close relationship between all of them, they fully expected sending this guy out to find Jesus and for Jesus to come back with him and heal Lazarus right away, because he was healing all these other people. They must have thought, oh, well, this is a slam dunk. Send this guy out to Jesus, Jesus comes back, wham, bam, Lazarus is better. Black and white scenario. But this is what it says in the text. It says when the guy gets to Jesus, listen to this now, it says that he doesn't even use Lazarus' name. He just tells Jesus, the one whom you love is sick. Now I want you to imagine this. If you have a relationship like this that is so close that the guy doesn't even use the dude's name, he just says the one whom you love. This would be like somebody coming and telling me, hey, my sister's sick. Instantly I know who they were talking about. They wouldn't have to use my sister's name. She's my sister. And so this was on the same wavelength, this type of relationship between Lazarus and Jesus. It was extremely close. And Jesus loved everybody, but there was something unique about this relationship with Lazarus. There was a kinship there, a friendship, a closeness. And this is what Jesus tells the guy. It says, and I'll just read the verse for you real quick. When the guy finally gets to Jesus, it says this about Jesus' actions. It says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary. So, because He loved them, when He heard that Lazarus was ill, He stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was at. What type of sense does that make, right? Like Lazarus is died, like deathly ill. And it says because Jesus loved Martha and Mary so much, and we already know he loves Lazarus, because of this, he decides to stay where he's at 2 days longer. Like instead of going instantly back. That makes no sense, right? And so, 4 days goes by before Jesus finally walks us into town, into the town of Bethany where Lazarus is at. And listen to this. When Jesus finally shows his face to Martha and Mary, Lazarus is dead, like he's gone. He'd been dead for 4 days. And it says as Jesus makes his way into the town of Bethany, Martha hurries out to meet him. Now think about this. Have you ever been like really mad or really upset with somebody and you were just like thinking about all the things you were going to say to them when they finally showed their face or when they got home? I have to think, this is how Martha was, and this is why she didn't wait for Jesus to show up on her doorstep. Like as soon as she heard Jesus was approaching city limits, like she ran out to meet him face to face. Because this is what it says. This is what it says when she came to Jesus. She instantly says, Jesus, the first words out of her mouth were, Jesus, if you would have been here sooner, my brother would still be alive. I mean, that's... You don't need to say anything more. She was hurt. She was upset. It's like, where have you been at, Jesus? Like, if you would have been here sooner, Lazarus would still be alive. Instead, he's been dead for 4 days. And this is what Jesus says to her. In John 11:25, he says, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And Martha said to him, Yes, Lord. I believe it. You are the Christ. So, even though Martha is hurt, and all this, she says, Lord, I still believe that you're the Christ. I still believe in you. And so then, as Jesus makes his way to the house, it says in John 11:32, it says this. It says, Now when Mary, Martha's sister, came to Jesus, she fell at his feet, saying, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So she says the same exact thing to Jesus as Martha did. So you see like their basic overall emotions. It's like, Jesus, where have you been at? Why did you allow this to happen? If you would have just been here sooner, my brother could have been alive. And this is this is what it says. It says when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people who were with her weeping, it says he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. Then he said, Where have you buried Lazarus? They said to him, Come and we'll show you. And then the shortest verse in the whole Bible, 2 words. It says, Jesus wept. Now, you're probably wondering, what does all of this have to do with God's plans versus my desires? Well, this is what I want you to see. Martha and Mary's brother was dying. He was deathly ill. That was one of those instances where they all knew he was going to die. It was only a matter of time. And so they sent this guy to Jesus, fully expecting Jesus was going to come back and heal Lazarus. This was the desire of their heart. And they fully expected it to happen, like they were hoping it would happen. That they had pretty much already, like, it was in the bank. Jesus was going to come back and Lazarus was going to be healed. And Jesus never shows up. And it says in the text, like I read you, it says, because Jesus loved Martha and Mary so much, he decided to stay in the town 2 days longer. So basically this is what it's saying in the text. Because Jesus loved Martha and Mary and Lazarus, he decided to let Lazarus die. Think about that. And you're like, at the time that makes no sense. Why would he do that? And this is the reason he done that. Think about this. Think about how much greater Martha and Mary's faith was after he raised Lazarus from the dead. Like, dude had been dead for 4 days. It says in the text that Martha and Mary were like, Jesus, why are you going over to the tomb? He's been dead for 4 days. He probably stinks by now. That's what the text actually says. Think about how much greater their faith was after he raised Lazarus up from the dead, and how much closer their relationship was with Jesus. As opposed to if Jesus would have came instantly when the guy brought him and he would have just healed Lazarus. Jesus had healed people hundreds of times before, so far. This is the first time he raised somebody up from the dead. Think about how much greater that was compared to if he would have just healed Lazarus. And this is how this compares to our life. Guys, sometimes, because Jesus loves us so much, all these great desires that we have and all these things we want to just work out. I mean, think about it, guys. Let's be honest. Sometimes, a lot of things we wake up in the morning desiring them. We wake up in the morning wanting this to happen or wanting that to happen. We think about it when we go to bed and we wake up wanting the same thing. And there's just all these desires in our life that may not be God's plan for us. And God loves us so much that a lot of times He has to let those desires and those plans that we have die. Just like He let Lazarus die, He has to let those plans and those desires die and become nothing in our life. And this is why, just like it was so much greater for Him to raise Lazarus up from the dead, it says in the Bible that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ever ask, think, or even imagine. But guys, God's plans have no room in our life if our life is totally consumed with our own desires and own wants. And sometimes God has to just sit back and watch all of our plans and all of our dreams die a slow death until we're left with nothing. And then He can step in and do something greater than we ever could have hoped for. And the second thing I want you to see is this. When Martha met Mary before He ever came into the town, and Mary was upset and asking, "Why, Jesus, why?" Jesus said, "Do you believe in me? Do you believe that I'm the Christ? Do you believe that whoever believes in me shall live and not die?" And Martha says, past all of her hurt and all of her pain, regardless of all that, she still says, "Lord, yes, I believe that you are the Christ." And this is what I want you to see in this, guys. When things aren't working out in our lives and our dreams and our plans seem to be just shattering around us, I want you to understand this. We have to trust Jesus' heart, and we have to trust His goodness, and we have to trust His love for us, and say, "Jesus, even though I don't understand this, I know that you are for me and not against me. I know that you love me." In spite of all that, in spite of Lazarus laying inside a tomb dead, Martha said, "Jesus, I still trust in your heart. I still believe you're the Christ, and I will still follow you." And guys, when everything is going on around us and our plans don't seem to be working, we have to understand that God has His plans for our life, and they're going exactly as He wants them to. Even though our plans are just falling down around us, if we hold on and trust in Jesus and the goodness of Jesus' heart, His plans will be worked out exactly like they need to be. And this is the last thing that I want y'all to see is, when Mary runs out to Jesus and she says the same thing Martha said, "Jesus, why?" And then it says that all of the people that were gathered with Him, all of their friends come out, and they're all weeping. They're all crying. It says Jesus wept right along with them. It said when He saw them weeping, His heart and spirit were deeply moved. And it says that He wept with them. Now I want you to think about this. A lot of people probably read this and they think, "Oh, well, Jesus got teary-eyed." It said that Martha and Mary were weeping. If your brother had just died, you'd be a lot more than teary-eyed. Yet it uses the same word for Martha and Mary, the word weeping, as it does for Jesus. It said Martha and Mary were weeping, and Jesus was weeping. So it means Jesus was crying just as hard as Martha and Mary was. And get this, Jesus was the only one in the entire joint and the whole lot of those people that were there that knew everything was going to turn out completely alright. He knew He was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, and He knew that it was only literally a matter of minutes longer that Lazarus was going to be dead. And yet He still wept right along with them. And this is what I want you to understand, guys. When all of our plans are shattering around us and Jesus is having to sit back and watch our plans die a slow death, so we will finally come to Him and say, "God, your way, not my way." Even while He's sitting back watching this happen, guys, He still feels our pain. He knows what it's like for us to have dreams and for us to want to do this and want to do that. Even though they're not of Him, it's not like He's just sitting back cold-hearted and being like, "Oh, well, that's your own fault." Jesus has compassion for you. He hurts when you hurt. He feels what you feel, guys. And I want you to understand this, that even though Jesus knew He was fixing to raise Lazarus up from the dead, He wasn't like, "Oh, y'all, chill out, calm down, dry up the tears, this is going to be okay." No, it says He wept right along with them. And so, guys, I want to encourage you today and help you understand that God does have plans for our lives, and we can't simply live always by our own desires. But at the same time, God's plans are greater than anything we could ever have for ourselves. That we have to trust God's heart when our plans aren't working out and know that He is for us and that He has better plans for us. And we also have to understand that God cares for us and He feels what we feel. And when we're crying and when we're hurt, He feels it too. And even though He might have to watch our plans die a slow death, that doesn't mean that He doesn't have compassion for us and He isn't right there with us. In it, in the thick of it, in the mess of it, He's right there with us, guys. So I hope this has encouraged you. I love you guys. Remember, it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. I love you guys, and I'll see you.